Hi guys, welcome to another Monday night study. Today we wanted to take a look at Zechariah chapter 5, the prophecy of the woman in the basket. And what makes this interesting, we've talked about this a little before, but last week we were looking at the vision of Noah and the vision that's recorded in Daniel chapter 2. And we were talking about we're wanting to make really good graphics for all those things to really drive home the major points. So first off, that according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, the prophets, and there are many, but just focusing on the biblical prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Hosea, Zechariah, uh, supposedly they wrote more than what's in the Old Testament. But the concept is what's in the Old Testament, or in other words, what is of their writings that's put in the canon, is put in the canon specifically because it has something to do with end time prophecy. Now, it may or may not be the end of their age and or our age and or end of the millennium, but end time prophecy nonetheless. So if Isaiah made a prophecy about some guy, and if you don't straighten up, the Lord will strike you dead, and he did or didn't, and it took place, and that has no picture of end time prophecy or anything, then that would not be recorded. So that's kind of what they talked about. So being that's the case, all of the Old and the New Testament, or all the major and minor prophets rather, have some sort of a bearing on end time prophecy. So a lot of times we look at these, and in Zechariah, there's a lot of prophecies. And what happens is that this is after they come back from the Babylonian exile, and you have Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi are the three prophets that prophesy after they come back. And so this probably has to deal with, at least partially, their return, what's going on there, and then possibly other things. And we can see things in Zechariah about Jesus coming in on a donkey, things like that. So there's definitely pieces of Zechariah that are first coming prophecies, some that are second coming prophecies, and elsewhere. And a lot of people, when the apostasy started in the church, they started saying, well, these are probably all prophecies. It all has to do with the end of that era back then. It's got nothing to do with us. And whatever it meant is what it meant back then, and we're done with it. Later on, they started saying, well, we really don't believe in prophecy. They're just stuff. So it's interesting to see the scrolls talk about that. So I wanted to look at the prophecy of the woman in the basket, and then I want to show a graphic. And again, what I'm trying to do is pull the major prophecies together and do something like Clarence Larkin did, some sort of a picture chart book with explanations, and not just include the Old Testament prophecies and anything from the New, but also things from the scrolls, if the church fathers had an idea of what it meant or what it didn't, or however they connected it, kind of pull all that together. And that's something that's usually not done. The church fathers are not authoritative, but if they're not lying and the text hasn't been tampered with, and they say, this is what I learned studying under Peter, John, Jude, these people, yeah, that's pretty important. So we want to look at all that. So first, let's go to eSword. And this is Zechariah chapter 5. Zechariah chapter 5 has two prophecies in it. And basically what happens is Zechariah is an interesting book because he comes back, or they all come back from the Babylonian captivity. And now Zechariah is going to have 8 visions in one night. A lot of times you and I might have a dream and we might think, I wonder if it's prophetic, and we stop and we think about it. Can you imagine one night, you wake up one morning and you're trying to keep them straight. I've just had 8 separate visions given to me by the Lord. So you go write them down, and there's other things too. But 8 visions in one night. So they're all kind of connected. And they all have things to do with them back then, and they all have things to do, or pieces at least, with the comings and other types of prophecy. So in this case, you see the vision of the flying scroll. And that means certain things, but at the very least, the scroll that says thief and liar on it And the basic idea is that the scroll, it's measured, and it's the exact same size as the tabernacle. And basically, they were commanded to rebuild the tabernacle. They said they would. They were supposed to tithe so that they could rebuild it. They decided to build their stuff first, so that makes them liars and thieves. So that's definitely that part. And it may or may not have something to do with end time prophecy. But this one definitely does. And so this is the woman in the basket, or in the ephah. And so this is really interesting. Well, it's only a few verses long. I want to read it, kind of explain it, and then I want to show you the graphic that we designed for it. So in this case, everyone looks at this, and it's supposed to be a harlot of some sort, which is probably a false religious system, put in a basket and taken by two angels, kind of, somewhere away from everybody, and that's the end of it. And that's pretty much the only thing people remember. And there are very specific keys to the prophecy that we overlook. For instance, the basket is an ephah, which is specifically an Egyptian weight, not a Hebrew weight. Now, it's a bush, like we have a bushel basket. It's a measurement of so much three-dimensional weight or mass, like so much corn, so much wheat in a bushel basket or in an ephah. But it's sealed with a lead seal, and a lead seal is very, very important. And we'll see some other things in here too. So it's not so much important where we got started or even what it is, but how it ends. And that's the thing we want to look at to see if it has any kind of a bearing in our time period. So in Zechariah 5, verses 5 to 11, is this vision of the woman in the basket, or the ephah. So it says, "Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said, 'Now lift up your eyes and see what goes forth.'" So there's something he's supposed to look up, and there's something there that's going somewhere else, going forth, going somewhere. So he looks up to see what this is. And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "It is an ephah that goes forth." And then he said, "Moreover, this is their resemblance throughout all the earth." So throughout all the earth, whatever this is, this form that it takes, is something that is seen all over, or it goes out eventually to all the earth. "And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sits in the midst of the ephah. And he said, 'This is wickedness.' And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead on the mouth thereof." Now, I'm using King James, but so basically he sees this. You might think of it as a wicker basket. It's some sort of a basket that holds an ephah. And so it's got something to do with grain. Grain is things that you buy and sell. So it's got something to do with buying and selling things. But there's this woman, and this woman is called wickedness. Now, this word in Hebrew for wickedness, it can mean wickedness in general, which can be any kind of wickedness, from murder to theft to whatever. But most of the time, this is referring to what we would call a prostitute. And so in Old Testament symbolism, a prostitute or a wicked woman is an unfaithful woman. And that symbolizes Israel, or the church, or you and I in a covenant with God, and we have apostatized in some way, usually something along the lines of going after strange gods. So maybe we are Christian, but we also worship Buddha. They were Jewish, they also worshiped Baal, things like that. So it's some sort of false religious system, and called wickedness. So again, there's this basket, which is a container. It has something to do with buying and selling. And they take wickedness, which is a wicked or a false religious system of some sort, and they put her in this basket. Well, the basket, of course, you could always hop out of the basket. So they seal it with a lid, but we're told that the lid specifically is a weight of lead. So, and this is very important. When we went back and started looking at the metallic kingdoms in Daniel chapter 2 and in Noah's prophecy, lead had something to do with Babylon or Shinar and those areas. Lead had something to do specifically in another place with Mystery Babylon in the New Testament. So he sees a wicked or a prostitute woman in a basket sealed with a lead lid. Lead is heavy, so she can't get out, but it's sealed, and it could be sealed with any kind of metal. All metal is strong as far as a door, but it's lead. So this is what he's seeing. So then verse 9 says this, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came out from where we don't know, but there came out of something, or all of a sudden appeared, 2 women. And they had the wind in their wings, which means they were fast and could fly. And they had wings like the wings of a stork. A lot of people will have pictures of this, and they'll think of them as like a female angel. It's a pretty girl, and then wings, and usually all in white, like an angel. But in this case, we're told specifically it's a stork. Now, in Judaism, a stork is an unclean bird. And when you look this up, a stork can be any particular color. Most often it's white and black, but it can be other colors. So in this case, these are things, people, that partner with wickedness, symbolizing wickedness or false religion. It's probably black, probably a black wing. But in any case, it's an unclean bird. So there are these 2 women, and this has always been the question. It's like, who are these 2 women? People say, well, maybe it was Israel and Judah, and they were kicking out paganism, or maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Well, Israel and Judah did come back at this point and did kick out paganism and were loyal to God for a time until the new apostasy hit. So that's a possibility. But also remember, according to the scrolls, this has got something to do with end time prophecy. So it says these 2 ladies, these women that had stork wings, says they lifted up the Ephah. Now the Ephah is going to have wickedness, the wicked woman in it, sealed with lead. So it's lead, the basket, and the woman, the whole thing. She's contained for the time being, trapped in this basket. So the 2 women with the stork wings pick the basket up. It says between earth and heaven. So in other words, they're not crawling along the earth or traveling in a wagon. They're not going straight up out of sight. They're going up in the air and flying over somewhere and landing. So it's a very quick travel because they're speedy. They have wings. So they lifted up between the earth and the heaven, and they took it somewhere. So then the last 2 verses say this. So I said to the angel that talked with me, whether do these bear the Ephah? So in other words, where are these 2 women that are winged? Where are they taking the Ephah with the lead and the woman? And he said to me, and this is a key thing, we skip over this, to build it being the Ephah and the wicked woman that's in it, a house. Now, this particular word in Hebrew usually means house, but it all depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about donkeys and horses, the word would be used, and of course that would mean a stable at that point. If you're talking about people, we're talking about a house. It's where whatever it is we're talking about lives. If you're talking about a group of people, a religious movement, a denomination like Pharisees, Sadducees, whatever, it can be translated temple, or I guess technically it could also be synagogue, anything like that. So this is a wicked religious system. It's taken to a temple. So there's actually a temple built for it to house the wicked religion, and it does stuff there, but eventually it will come back or come out is the implication. So where is this temple for this wicked religious woman? It says to build us a house in the land of Shinar. And we skip over that all the time. That's very, very key. Shinar is the old biblical word for Babylon. So way back in Genesis, we remember that Nimrod started from the area of Shinar and built Babel, Erech, and Calneh. And then the Canaanites from the other side of Shem's territory came in, and eventually they came together to create an empire. And it was the very first post flood pagan empire, in which you can see Nimrod playing the part of an antichrist, and a guy by the name of Anuki running the religious system playing the part of a false prophet. And then you can see Abraham and what Abraham did to destroy the kingdom. And a lot of it's mentioned there in Genesis. It's kind of broken up in Genesis, so you don't realize what all is going on, but the pieces are all there. So anyway, Shinar then is Babylon. You can just think of it that way. Mesopotamia, that area. So this Ephah then, with the woman in it and the lead basket, is going to the land of Babylon, and it shall be established. It'll be there and remain there, established there, and set up there her own base. So her, specifically talking about not the Ephah, the basket, or the lead, but the false religious system, in her own base. So when you pull this together, the clues are two women dressed, or two women that have stork wings, a woman that is wickedness. The woman is put in an ephah basket, and the basket is sealed with lead. Now, ephah might have a specific meaning by itself. I'm not sure if it does, but an ephah, when you think about that, it's basically a bushel basket. It's something big enough that you could put a small woman in. If I said teacup or a gallon jug or something like that, it wouldn't fit the picture. How do you get a person in a gallon jug? In this case, it's an ephah, so it's big enough. We would probably say a bushel barrel, a bushel barrel of corn or something. Well, that's big enough. You could probably put a small, not a large person, but a small person in there. So you've got the ephah basket, the lead, the wickedness, the two stork women, and then the fact that they go to Shinar or Babylon to a temple. Again, it's all a religious system or concept, and it's set up as a base of operations there. So we look at this and we should immediately think, okay, later on in prophecy, there is this Babylonian mystery religion. And we see that in the book of Revelation, that comes out and basically takes over the planet. So the basic idea is, according to Revelation, is the Antichrist comes on the scene. And of course, anybody new coming on the scene doesn't have complete power at the start. So he uses a false religious system, which is called Mystery Babylon in Revelation, to come to power. So he rides her, so to speak, or uses her to get to a position of power. And it takes basically half the tribulation period. So he gets up to the half of the tribulation period. Then he sides with 10 nations, and he and these 10 nations decide to attack the Babylonian mystery religion, which is apparently headquartered somewhere and is a religious system and an economic system, as we're told in Revelation. And then he destroys it and institutes his own religion with his own false prophet. That's when we get the mark of the beast, actually, in the middle of the tribulation period, according to the book of Revelation. So what we're looking for right now is, what is this false religious system, this Babylonian system? Is it already here? Has it been here for a long time? Is it even created yet? If it's not created yet, it's probably going to be a long time before the Antichrist is here. And I think most of us think it's probably fairly close. So we need to identify what this system is. And we can do that by looking at Revelation here, Noah's Testament, Daniel, and then the Ezra Apocalypse, and the book of Gad the Seer, those kind of things. They each have clues. When we pull them together, we actually get a really good definition. Specifically, the book of Gad, chapter 2, will tell us exactly who we're talking about or how it forms. So in this case, we need to identify these. So with this in mind, I'm trying to create good graphics for us to look at. We don't need to know that there's a bushel basket and then a woman, and then the woman's put in it. We have that as the story. We need the picture at the end of the vision. So at the end of the vision, there should be a temple, and there should be a bushel basket in it, sealed with lead, and there's a woman in there, and there's these two women that have stork wings that have brought this here and put it up in its own house or its own temple. So this is the illustration that I've got. And again, we're going back to our Bible Facts homepage. And like I was showing you last week, we go to photos or PDFs or wherever we have it, but prophecy charts. And then last week we looked at Daniel chapter 2 and Noah's vision of all the empires and then the specific empire that he dealt with. And so now this is the one from Zechariah 5, and I just want to share that with you. So here's the picture that I came up with. Make it just a little bit bigger even. And see here. So, okay, there we go. So, yeah. So here's the idea then. So we have the ephah or the bushel basket. We have this woman inside, which is wickedness or a false religious system. And of course, we know this to be Babylon now. She's been taken to Babylon and put in a temple. This is like a little nook you'd put a statue in. And she's been taken there by these two women with stork wings. And when you look at it like that, you get the idea that they're supernatural, but they're not angelic. They're not pretty girl angels or anything like that. These are wicked things. So when you pull this together, if this is Babylon, Mystery Babylon, these two are probably the daughters of Babylon, or the ones that help her. Now in Revelation, we have commercial Babylon, Mystery Babylon, and then there's the daughters of the harlot, or the daughters of Babylon. And I was talking with a couple people at church not too long ago. The concept of a daughter of something doesn't mean it or in a different form, but it means something that came from it. Just like an actual, if I had a daughter, my daughter would be kind of sort of for me, but she's her own person. So one thing, for instance, this, and the easiest way to see this is in Zephaniah. In Zephaniah, it talks about how the Messiah comes back and then he's ruling and reigning from Jerusalem. And when he first begins his reign, so the Antichrist has been defeated, the temple's probably been done, and he's sitting on a throne from Jerusalem ruling. At that point, you know, a little ways into the millennial reign, it says that a delegation from Ethiopia brings him a special present. A lot of us have theorized that it's either the Ark of the Covenant or the mercy seat or something from that time period, because they've had this for a long, long time. And if you know about the history of Ethiopia, it's very interesting, starting with Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, Menelik, and then we get down to Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts. They all play a part to create this. So basically, it says that the daughter of my dispersed ones will bring the offering. And so that's that language again. So we understand that Solomon and the Queen of Sheba had a son named Menelik. He started the longest ruling dynasty on the planet, actually, from about 1000 BC, and it went all the way up to, I think it was 1973, when it was disbanded. And so this long lineage, we call that like Falasha Jews that are ruling down there. Most of those are back in Israel now. But if you think about it, you've got Jews that follow or want Messiah, that understand the way things were. And in the book of Acts, Philip goes to the Ethiopian eunuch, and he's reading from the prophet Isaiah. And Philip begins to explain to him about Messiah. He believes and then wants to be baptized in the name of Christ, or, you know, as a Christian. So Philip baptizes him. And it's an interesting story because instantly Philip is caught away, harpazoed, raptured, in other words, back to where he was at. So it's important that Philip stay in the city and preach the gospel and baptize people. He can save lots of people there in a short time. But it's extremely, even more important that he take a small break and go out and make sure this Ethiopian eunuch is saved and then get right back to what you were doing. Well, the Ethiopian eunuch takes, he's someone in Queen Candace's court, and he takes the gospel back and creates the Christian movement in Ethiopia. So the Ethiopian Coptic Church is born. And supposedly they're the ones that control the relics. So just saying all that, going back to Zephaniah, when it says the daughter of the dispersed ones will bring the offering, the dispersed ones would have to be the Falasha Jews, the people from Menelek. So it's the Jewish group. So the daughter of the dispersed ones would be an offshoot of that group. So like Ethiopian Coptic Church or someone else, whoever's down there. So if we have Babylon, and then we have the daughters of Babylon, the daughters aren't identical either. So there's different groups. It would almost be like we have the Christian church and then we have cults. And the two cults might be totally opposite each other or something. So it's something to look at, but we have the Babylonian mystery religion, the daughters of Babylon. The only other thing I did put in here, since we have this, is this nook for a statue has a capstone. So I went ahead and put the symbol that we got from Gad chapter 1 and 2 on here just to kind of connect it. So when this is a book and we go through it, you'll be able to go to the chapters and see how they connect. So you've got two religious systems that come together to form Mystery Babylon, according to Gad, and they're symbolized as a donkey and a camel in a moon. And so you have two daughters of Babylon that carry this and get it started. So it's an interesting thing. So it's obviously a prophecy for our time period. But I want to try to do this kind of a thing. So if you opened up the book and you saw this as a picture and thought, ooh, this is interesting. And then you started reading the text that we did, the explanation, the histories, and quite a bit more, and then how it might be connected with the other chapter, which is Gad, then you would begin to be able to see these things real well. I really enjoy what Clarence Larkin did in Dispensational Truth, the way it was designed. He was an architect, and this was back in like 1903, 07, something like that. But he would create a picture like this, a big chart, hand-drawn, and then he would have 4 or 5 or 10 pages, however long it took, to explain it. Then we'd go into the next chart. So it's actually a book of charts with explanations, which is what I'm trying to create here. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. So Babylon, mystery religion, sealed in lead. In Testament of Noah, lead is the Babylonian system. So lead, Babylon, this is being taken to Shinar, which is Babylon, set in a temple by the two daughters. So these two daughters of Babylon are what creates this particular mystery religion, and it's helped to be defined by Gad. So this whole thing is a really nice photo, I think, to put together for that. And we want to continue doing these things for lots of stuff. So backing up from there, we have, oh, I made it really big. Anyway, we have Daniel 2, the Empire of Noah, Noah's empires, and then Zechariah chapter 5. And let's see if I can get that back there. So anyway, so that's the study I wanted to give you tonight. And just let you know again, when the books come out, they'll be for sale. But in the meantime, and actually even after, I want to try to take all these photos and just put here so we can try to begin to recreate the School of the Prophets and understand from a Essene Zadok view what the prophets mean, how they connect for end time prophecy, and for us specifically the second coming time period that we're in and how those things come together.